Thank you all for joining us in this webinar. Today we will discuss the latest developments in the Gulf region and their effects on Turkey with two esteemed speakers. Their experience and knowledge on Gulf region will enlighten us. Before we move on with our panel, I would like to introduce TÜSİAD's Gulf Network for those who are not familiar with, and briefly share my assessment of Turkey's relation with the region. We, as TÜSİAD, established the Gulf Network within TÜSİAD 3 years ago. Why? We observed Turkey's trade and investment relations with the Gulf region has strengthened over the last 10 years. We also saw GCC countries became some of the leading international investors in Turkey, while share of trade with the Gulf region also grew despite some obstacles. We saw the potential of business relations with the Gulf region are great. As TÜSİAD, we thought there is further room for improvement. We as the business community have the responsibility to keep the dialogue channels open and work for stronger ties even more in tough times. Establishing relations are the key to realize the significant potential for developing mutually beneficial partnerships. Firstly, in the last 3 years, we organized countless meetings with business associations, financial institutions, and diplomatic missions from the region. Each of these meetings have proved that there should be a focal contact in the region to promote Turkish business in Gulf and to make Turkish business world aware of the business opportunities at Gulf. Therefore, TÜSİAD established a Gulf network based at Dubai, and Arda Bey is our coordinator. Secondly, in March 2020, we launched our network in Dubai with an event. This occurred just we were all locked down and was the latest TÜSİAD senior delegation visiting outside Turkey, showing the importance of Gulf region and its potential for Turkey. The strong and high-level participation of business people to the launch event ensured us that we are on the right track, and we shall continue to expand our presence in the region. Thirdly, we have established a sound cooperation with Dubai Chamber of Commerce with a focus on some sectors, and contacts being determined at each site for joint projects. Here, I would like to thank Mr. Majid Al-Guarir and his team on behalf of TÜSİAD for this important relationship. We are working on building similar relations with the other Gulf countries' business associations. These 3 years have been important for us as Gulf Network. When we first initiated the TÜSİAD Gulf Network, I was confident that the potential of the Gulf region may be realized with an inclusive roadmap. A roadmap with a focus on one-to-one contact with business associations at Gulf, adding our focal regional contact as our Arda Bey, and also adding GCC parent Turkish companies as our members, in addition to our members of Turkish companies. Gulf region parent companies operating in Turkey added our members as TÜSİAD, and we also invite new ones from GCC, as this reflects the potential among business partners. Myself, Arda Bey, TÜSİAD dedicated team members, Hale Hanım, Tamer Bey, Başak Bey, Global Relations Roundtable leader Can Yüceoğlu, and our TÜSİAD president, Simone Kablowski. We strongly believe that the business community in the region can work together, and we have a lot to achieve jointly. Without further ado, I would like to leave the floor to Arda Bey and our speakers. Thank you for your attention. Ma selame.
Thank you very much, Bilgin Hanım. Good afternoon and welcome to all joining us virtually on this webinar today as we discuss and explore the latest developments in the GCC region and Turkey with our distinguished guest speakers. Before we start, I would like to briefly introduce myself to those who do not know me already. My name is Arda Cenk Tokbaş, and I am the GCC Network Coordinator of TÜSİAD, as well as an executive who has been doing business in the region for over 25 years. I'm the founding managing director of 2 companies in the UAE, subsidiaries of Yaşar Holding from Turkey, who owns Pinar brand. I have always done my best to contribute on improving the long-term economic and even cultural ties between the GCC countries and Turkey across different industries and scopes, from trade to manufacturing, from tourism to sports, and many others. All of us across the entire world have gone and are still going through an incredibly challenging year. None of us could have imagined a year ago what was awaiting us in 2020. There has been basically no single country, no economy, no business, family, or even no individual in the world that has not been affected by the pandemic and felt the strong headwinds. Some maybe more, some luckily less, but at the end of the day, everyone. All of a sudden, a new abnormal has landed in our lives. Such unprecedented times have taught us how to change and adapt faster than ever before, reminded us of many important values that have been unfortunately forgotten, forced us to reinvent our businesses, simply broken all the grounds, and have guaranteed that there are many more lessons to learn ahead. Just a few words about the format of our webinar today. Our guest speakers, whom I will introduce to you shortly, will each have 15 minutes to discuss their related topics. That will be followed by a Q&A session, for which we have actually allocated a longer time frame. Therefore, I would like to encourage and invite our audience to submit their questions in the Q&A section, and I believe our speakers would willingly answer all. Today, we are joined by two distinguished guests. Ambassador Mithat Rende, whom I met first time in 2008 when he was our ambassador to Qatar, will be discussing the geopolitics of the Gulf and the challenges ahead. During his last post, His Excellency Mithat Rende served as the ambassador and the permanent representative of Turkey to OECD between 2013 and 2016, and was elected as the chairman of the executive committee of OECD. Ambassador Rende assumed various positions at the Turkish embassies and permanent missions throughout his diplomatic career, including in Damascus, Rome, Brussels, Doha, Sofia, Vienna, and London. Ambassador Rende is currently a board member of Industrial Development Bank of Turkey. Our second speaker, Mr. Nenad Pacek, is a good old friend of mine. I mean, our friendship is old, definitely not him. Nenad will be talking today about the latest economic developments in the Gulf and its implications for Turkey's trade and investment relationships in the region. Nenad Pacek is the founder and the president of Global Success Advisors and the MIA Business Group, which is an advisory helping regional executives of many multinationals running businesses in the Middle East and Africa. The advisory's focus is helping executives understand global economic, business, and political outlooks, and helping companies build strategies for sustainable growth internationally. Nenad is also the author of many acclaimed business books. Ambassador Mithat Rende, I would like to welcome you first to deliver your speech on the geopolitics of the Gulf and the challenges that lie ahead of us. Over to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you, Arda Bey. Thank you very much indeed for your very generous introduction. Let me start by expressing my most sincere thanks to the chairman of TÜSİAD, my dear friend Simone Kaslowski, also to the Deputy Secretary General Hale Onursal, and also to Bilgün Hanım, Bilgün Gürkan, who made the introductory remarks. I also thank all the team of TÜSİAD for having organized this, timely organized this important event. I feel honored, I'm honored and feel humbled for being also one of the speakers today. Dear participants, distinguished members of TÜSİAD, dear friends, when we try to look at developments in the Gulf region and try to analyze the situation and draw conclusions, we should always keep in mind that the Gulf and the GCC in general, it is a part and parcel of the greater Middle East. We all know that the Middle East is a tormented region with ethnic, religious, and sectarian conflicts, with proxy wars. A case in point is the war in Syria, which started in 2011, and the whole country has been devastated. Another example is the war in Yemen, which started in 2015. So when we analyze the Gulf, we should keep in mind that we are also in the Middle East. So let's have a deeper look at the Gulf region. The Gulf region, it has been a playground for many powers throughout history. A playground, and still it is. Many countries are quite influential there because of the peculiarities of the region. First of all, it is of geostrategic importance. Its location. Secondly, of course, it has huge proven oil and gas reserves by any standard. It has a very developed energy infrastructure. Just keep in mind that, for example, the energy city called Ras Laffan in Qatar did cost about over $140 billion, an integrated energy city. And then also the Abqaiq oil refinery and delivery system in Saudi Arabia and in many other countries in the Gulf. Also, what makes the Gulf region so important is it's also narrow waterways. Keep in mind that, for example, the Strait of Hormuz is so important that one fifth of the total oil deliveries and the total oil consumed worldwide is crossing the Strait of Hormuz and mainly in the direction of China, Japan, South Korea, and many other Asian countries. Also, another peculiarity is the power sharing system in the Gulf. The power is generally shared between the clergy and the dynasties, the royal families, which is also quite important. It's also, let's face it, the GCC has been divided. The countries have different threat perceptions. For example, Saudi Arabia considers Iran as a rising power, and also with its rising influence in the Middle East, especially in certain countries like in Syria, in Iraq, following the occupation of the United States, also in Lebanon with Hezbollah, and also its influence in Yemen. These developments and the rising influence of Iran is a main source of concern for the Saudis. While, for example, the Qataris, they just have a different maybe threat assessments, and then they feel a little bit maybe squeezed between the West and the East, and their neighbors between the East and the West. And also, when we study the Gulf region, we should always also keep in mind that the United States is the arbiter. When we talk about the Caucasus, we almost agree that the arbiter is the Russian Federation. But here in the Gulf, the United States is the arbiter. And in fact, let's just keep in mind that recently, the operations under the Secretary of State Pompeo and the advisor to the President Jared Kushner, and the successful conclusion of certain agreements with the United Arab Emirates and Israel, an agreement with the Bahrain and Israel were concluded. There are still negotiations to continue in the period ahead. I think again, Jared Kushner is planning to travel to the region to visit the authorities of Saudi Arabia and Qatar. So still, we can talk about a growing influence of the United States, and the United States is willing to bring together the Gulf states. The GCC should be empowered again as an alliance, as a regional integration project, and also to be able to face any possible threat from the other side of the Gulf, namely from Iran. So this is the situation in the Gulf. As I said, Iran is an important element here. What we have also is the blockade introduced by Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Bahrain against Qatar. And let's face it, everybody suffered from this blockade, and it's quite infamous from my personal point of view, because it was not really justified, because we diplomats believe in diplomacy, in dialogue, not in punishing other neighbors to make them just follow your instructions, or you should not impose conditions upon your neighbors, in my humble view. So the blockade should be resolved, and I think the many players, superpowers also, are trying to mediate and try to put an end to the blockade. I would welcome such mediation efforts in good faith. And also we have another very important development is the downward trade in the oil prices. Today we have an OPEC meeting also that will continue until tomorrow. So the downward trade in oil prices is a matter of concern for the oil-rich and gas-rich Gulf countries. And it's likely to continue. The low oil prices are likely to continue because of the fact that there is a serious energy transition worldwide, globally, and the oil prices will not be on the rise. So major projects like Vision 23 by the Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman it will be quite difficult to realize, like the very ambitious energy city Neom. Maybe if we have time, we can deal with these things too. But of course, this is the oil prices is another source of concern for the Gulf countries. Now, coming back to, maybe I should stop here as regards the general picture of the Gulf region, and talk a little bit about Turkish Saudi Arabia relations, Arda, if I have 5 more minutes, please. Now, it's unfortunately tension has been simmering between the two countries, but let's also not forget that Turkey and Saudi Arabia have deep-rooted historical and cultural relations, and these relations have been kept alive. The economic cooperation also gained momentum over the last 2 decades. Over 200 Turkish companies have carried out hundreds of major projects in Saudi Arabia. They contributed significantly to the development of the country, and we have highly rated and very well-known contractors doing business there. So I hope that they will continue to do so. Probably the relationship a little bit lost energy with the arrival of the new dynasty in Saudi Arabia. But let's keep in mind also that when King Abdullah, the late King Abdullah, when he visited Turkey in 2006, some 16 years ago, or 14 years ago, he was very well received by the Turkish leadership. Many friends will remember that he was so well received and pampered. Even the opposition leaders reacted to that he was treated with care and beyond the general diplomatic practice and so on. But then when he passed away in 2015, also let's keep in mind that the Turkish government declared a 3-day mourning, and also Turkish flags were flown half-mast, and so all the necessary things were done and with respect. So now what happened then? What happened is that, of course, let's face it, in bilateral relations, there are ups and downs sometimes, and the two governments or countries disagreed on certain regional issues, they had some, let's say, not converging, but diverging views regarding regional issues. For example, Turkey supported Qatar, and it was against the blockade, and supported Qatar and provided them with food and created a kind of a system to provide the Qataris with the needed food and other material. And also Turkey, from the very beginning, they were against the blockade. And also because of the fact that in 2014, Turkey and Qatar, they signed a military cooperation agreement. And then it was in 2017, it was ratified by the Turkish parliament, and the Saudis probably felt uneasy about the presence of Turkey in the Gulf, the presence of Turkish forces and military in the Gulf. Let me just maybe stop here. Very good. Thank you for.
We have 2 minutes more.
We have two more minutes. Excellent, excellent. So then. Of course, as I said, maybe also they fell apart in Libya. The two sides they fell apart in other places. But I am personally pleased to hear that the two leaders had a bilateral telephone. They had a telephone conversation during which maybe it was in the margin of the G20 presidency and the G20 summit, but still in the margin of the meeting, apparently they agreed to. Start a dialogue and instructed their foreign ministers to start this dialogue and start this rapprochement efforts. And it's most welcome. And I think yesterday the two ministers also got together and started this process. It's a very welcoming process. It's very important that we give a chance to diplomacy, to dialogue and understanding. Unfortunately, in this region, solidarity and understanding, mutual understanding, and the culture of peace and solidarity is in short supply. So we need really to be very patient and continue to normalize our relations. I hope that the normalization of Turkish-Saudi relations will also contribute to other bilateral relations between Turkey and other Gulf states and also in Egypt. So I should stop here, and if we have time, I would be more than happy to answer some of the questions at least. Thank you, Arda Bey.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and thank you very much, Mithat Bey. Definitely, we're going to have time, when we start the Q&A session. Now, let me just go to Mr. Nenad. Our second speaker, Mr. Nenad Paçek. Nenad, as an advisor for many CEOs in the Middle East and Africa, and regularly present your insights on the region's economic and business outlooks. Let us please hear from you today. What are the latest economic developments in the GCC and its implications for Turkey's trade and investment relationships in the region?
Thank you, Arda. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Arda, for inviting me to your meeting. I hope you can hear me and see me well.
Yes, we can.
Super. Thank you. Now, let me go through a quick executive summary of the most important things you need to know. First of all, this is a difficult year for the global economy, and it has implications, of course, for the GCC. This is the worst coordinated recession since the Second World War on the planet, and 9 out of 10 countries will be shrinking, with some exceptions mostly in Asia and a few in Africa. Pretty much all other countries will be shrinking this year. So really difficult trading conditions around the world, and particularly in many parts of the Middle East and Africa. We see on aggregate our clients' revenues declining when we aggregate all the sectors together. Next year, globally, we're of course expecting widespread vaccine availability to start kicking in at some point in Q2, also during Q3, and the last 4 or 5 months of next year should be coming back to some normality. This will of course also be positive for GCC nations as well. One thing that is crucial for GCC countries is the oil price and the oil price outlook. Here, the issue, and I would agree here with Mr. Ambassador, who mentioned that the oil price will be lower for longer. Let me just dig a little bit deeper into this. Up until the pandemic, the global oil consumption around the world has been going up every year 1.5%. While we had huge, wild price swings all of that time, and in fact, we ended up ranging from $9.50 a barrel to up to almost 150 in a space of around in a space of about 20 years or so. The issue here is that the financial industry has completely hijacked oil trading and the commodities trading. Everything is basically run in the oil futures market, which is nothing but a huge gambling casino where various funds are betting on rising prices or betting on falling prices. This is important to keep in mind. Now, during this time, during the pandemic, the oil price has, of course, been incredibly weak due to falling demand. And at the moment, the total cut in global supply has been 8.7% so far this year, while we estimate the demand globally will, in the end, for the whole year, shrink between 12 and 14%. This means there is an oversupply even today in the physical market. And while the traders are pushing the oil price slightly higher in recent weeks based on the good vaccine news, we could still see some negative surprises on the downside, especially in December, January, and February, as we enter a difficult flu and COVID season in the Northern Hemisphere. As soon as more good vaccine news arrives on the planet, we will see more betting upwards on the oil price side, and we expect oil price then to quickly zoom upwards of $50 a barrel, maybe even touching 60 or even slightly above in Q2 and maybe Q3. However, as soon as the oil price goes higher, this is going to create additional supply issues around the world. OPEC plus nations will be looking, how do we pump more? Because they have been very constrained. As you know, 5 years ago, OPEC nations were pumping 34 million barrels a day. Now they're pumping only 24 million. So everybody has taken significant cuts, and there will be major disagreements popping up at some point next year when oil price is higher and the discipline will be lacking. In the words of the old Saudi oil minister, Ali al-Naimi, he always said, OPEC has always been a cheating club and will always remain a cheating club, in my view. We already caught this year at least 5 countries cheating on the quotas. And this is very likely to get worse once the oil price is higher and everybody wants to fight for market share. At the same time, the US shale companies, which have been a major disruptor to the old oligopolistic structure of the global oil markets, they will be coming back as soon as the oil price is at least $47 a barrel. Even during this crisis, that they have not been affected too deeply. Shale output has only fallen so far during the pandemic from 9.1 million a day to 7.7 million a day. And then many will be coming back, reopen their rigs and sites, and this will add more supply as we enter into the last months of next year. And then oil majors, the likes of Shell and BP and other players, will go back, of course, to their shutdown wells, conventional offshore, and will fight for global share as well. At the same time, Joe Biden is very likely to open up Iran again for business for multinational companies. And Iran is very likely then to be allowed to export more of its oil to the global markets, probably as of the summer of next year or maybe slightly earlier. And this will add another 1 to 1.5 million barrels a day to the global markets. All I'm trying to say is that GCC nations will be affected by these movements, first positively in Q2 and Q3 as they collect more oil revenues, and then more negatively towards the end of the year 2021 and into 2022, as there will be yet again a significant oversupply in global markets. And of course, oil demand will not continue growing as in the past. Electrification of transportation is a huge trend towards renewables, less business travel in the future as well. All of these things will play a role in terms of oil demand. So for the GCC nations, one of the key things will be how do we diversify quicker away from oil? And this is one of the things we often report about in our regular reports for our 500 plus multinational clients that we are servicing in the Middle East and Africa. The outlook, therefore, for GCC nations is that we will see a little bit of pickup as oil price goes higher. The underlying confidence will only properly start to improve when global economy starts to pick up in the second half of the year. And then we expect more relative sluggishness going forward. The plus side in some countries in the GCC is that they have enough reserves and enough sovereign wealth funds. This is a huge buffer that some of them are sitting on. Abu Dhabi, for example, is sitting on over $800 billion in its sovereign wealth fund. There is another almost $100 billion sitting in the central bank of the UAE. That's a nice thing and a good buffer to have. In Saudi, the reserves are not far away from 500 billion US, and public debt, external debt is low. In Qatar, overall reserves are still over 300 billion US dollars, and in Kuwait, they have fallen from over 600 billion to just over 500 billion. But these are some of the best accumulations that you can find anywhere in the world. That means that these four countries are also able to borrow in international markets very easily if they need to. And Saudi, of course, is doing that heavily. And even recently, Dubai, considering upcoming debt obligations that are coming up in the next few years, has also started to raise some financing. This is important because otherwise, huge budget deficits everywhere would be really difficult to cover. So countries have relatively easy choice, at least these four. They can easily raise in domestic financing, international financing. They can use some of their sovereign wealth funds to cover some of the gaps. And this is crucial for maintaining at least basic economic stability, and at least in those four locations. The other two, Oman and Bahrain, in the GCC, of course, are more vulnerable. They have very low reserves. Credit ratings have been cut, and particularly in Oman, many numbers are looking really miserable at the moment in terms of domestic demand and GDP performance. Also, credit rating agencies are keeping both of these countries on their watch list for further downgrades further into junk. So for your business prospects, for Turkish exporters, Turkish companies operating in GCC, you should really distinguish between the four countries that have solid economic fundamentals and those that are really struggling with those, like Oman and Bahrain. Also, you should distinguish the markets in the way they're diversifying. UAE is probably going to be the most successful in its diversification program. It, of course, already started a long time ago, but now it's changing completely. And you will see in the coming years, both Abu Dhabi and Dubai trying to become major manufacturing and R&D hubs. They will try to attract investments in this regard. And the program is all running under the Vision 2071 umbrella, where basically it's a massive industrialization, high value added manufacturing, research and development that's going to offer Turkish companies significant business opportunities in the coming years. Of course, in the short term, business is sluggish. We only have, and I'll give you the data from our last survey, only 35% of our multinationals are expecting revenue growth this year. And only 38% are expecting to grow their profits, for example, in the UAE in 2020, and expecting then an improvement next year. So it's short term is not easy business, and payment delays are quite big, particularly in Dubai. Many of our clients waiting 8 to 9 months to get paid. But medium long term for the UAE is very strong in my view, and I think that will be a major opportunity for many companies. Also in Saudi, although the fundamentals are solid, business is shaky in the short term. Consumer goods companies are mostly in the minus, many in double digit after they tripled VAT. There is very little domestic investment, almost no foreign direct investment going into manufacturing into Saudi. At the same time, selling to the government, extremely price sensitive, difficult, and very long payment delays with selling to the government. So business is tough for most of our clients operating in Saudi Arabia, and just around 40% of our multinationals expect to grow their revenues and profits this year. Of course, for Turkish companies, the complication is political now. Mr. Ambassador touched on a few points there, but informal boycott of Turkish goods is very visible. I was talking actually this morning with one of our clients in the consumer goods industry, a big European player in consumer goods, and they were actually formally asked by the Saudi government last week not to ship from their Turkish factory into Saudi anymore. So they're looking for other ways to do that. So it seems the informal boycott has just become more formalized, at least with a direct impact on some of the multinational shipping there. And we also, the same multinational told me they wanted to bring in some of their Turkish executives to work in Dubai, and the work permits were just rejected. So it could be that UAE could be implementing a few things that might be disruptive as well for your business. And this is all due to the political issues that the Mr. Ambassador actually discussed earlier. So I don't think, by the way, that there will be any quick resolution to the boycott of Saudi of Turkish goods, or informal or formal, whatever it ends up being. I think the political issues will take a long time to be discussed. And considering who is running both countries, I don't think it will go easily. One thing that we are observing, of course, might be some political change within Saudi when President Biden takes over the United States. We will see if that plays any role in the way who is running Saudi. And of course, if there is any change in Saudi political leadership, the questions then will arise around the Vision 2030 and diversification. This is why we are not particularly positive on the Vision 2030 success, at least in the short term. We might be able to see some more progress later on, as Saudi is very keen on moving away from oil, but the program is not progressing particularly well at the moment. And most
Sorry,
of it is
apologies,
apologies,
Nenad. May I please request you to wrap up your speech, as we are nearing the end of our allocated time for the first part, actually, just maybe 2 minutes. Thank you.
Yes. I just wanted to say also on the business front, more than anything, and then we can address any economic issues during the Q&A session on many other markets as well, if you want. My advice to all the Turkish companies looking at the GCC is that you have to be aware that competition will get worse. You have all the big players, multinationals on the ground. You have a rising number of emerging market multinationals coming in, rising local family businesses. And the times of when you could be very successful selling into GCC by just using your local distributors and partners, those days are gone. If you don't have local presence of your own, your real corporation, at least the one man and the dog office on the ground, you will struggle to compete and you will struggle to gain market share. I would strongly advise you, despite the fact that times are not easy in terms of day-to-day business in the short term, to prepare your business properly for what will be very tough competition in the coming years. You need to increase your local relevance, your local presence, your local resilience against that rising competition. You need to think about going more direct, more semi-direct, taking greater control over your business and not relying so much on your local partners. Even many larger multinationals are still not localized enough, but if there is one trend that we are observing, is that many multinationals are becoming incredibly localized at the moment across not only GCC. I'm speaking here only about the entire Middle East and Africa, where if you want to compete properly in that part of the world, you will have to also take some steps to create more of your own local presence and not rely always and just on the local partners. So at the moment, multinationals, we have over 80% of our multinationals who are actually focusing on growing market share during the crisis. So competition is really tough, and price competition is difficult all over the place. And you can really only properly navigate if you're more localized. So maybe that's just last point that I wanted to raise, Arda, for that. And we'll see then some other questions that you and your colleagues might have.
Exactly. You're going to be able to, elaborate more in the coming Q&A session. Thank you very much, Nenad. And maybe, let's start the Q&A session now. Let me just address this question to you, Excellency Mithat Rende. As the part of Turkish diplomacy in the last decades, you have had very rich experience all over the world, actually. And I believe you have witnessed many crises, many ups and downs in different regions of the world. According to you, what should be the role of business world in making the bilateral or regional relations more sustainable during the hard times? If you can please unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes.
A very important question. Of course, in diplomacy, it's very important to continue by diplomatic means, but always diplomats and governments should be supported by the business community, definitely. And in certain parts of the world, the business community is very influential, and especially in the case of the Gulf countries, Turkish contractors and prominent businessmen, they have served almost every single Gulf state by realizing major projects. And I remember when I served in Qatar, that one of the Turkish companies was so well received by the emir himself that he offered another project without bidding, without just without any formality. So just to praise them, and I agree that in the case of the Gulf, the Turkish businessmen, businesswomen, and businessmen, and those who are running major companies, the CEOs, have an important role to play, and I hope that they will be able to they will be given a chance to play, because they have so many friends in the Gulf. They are working with, they are sharing the burden with them, they are sharing the pleasure and the benefits with them, and it's very important, especially when the lines of communications are closed, and it is the case, unfortunately. For example, with the United Arab Emirates, let's face it, it's quite tense now, and I have every sympathy towards our ambassador in Abu Dhabi and our consul general in Dubai. So here, probably it is you and your friends who should try to facilitate the activities of the diplomats and our politicians and leaders. But here, it's important also at this juncture to mention that I listened with great attention to Mr. Pacek and took notes of what he had to say. As regards Dubai and Abu Dhabi, I understand that they have some ambitious targets for the period ahead. But I think that Dubai and Sharjah, the two Emirates, basically the two Emirates, which their economy is based on trade, tourism, and services, they also suffered from the blockade against Qatar, because I know that the Qataris were major investors in Dubai. And now they are deprived of this opportunity to invest and to do business with Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So the blockade there should be an effort to put an end to the blockade. And also, it's very regrettable that there is an official, an unofficial boycott of Turkish goods in Saudi Arabia. I understand that, for example, the Riyadh Chamber of Commerce chairman, the chairman of Riyadh Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Ajlan Al-Ajlan, made it quite clear, and he made an appeal to the Saudi people to boycott Turkish goods, which is quite regrettable. Why should they do that? Because it is not in the interest of the Saudi people. The Turkish goods are of high quality and very competitive in terms of prices. So I hope this issue will be resolved in the near future. Let me stop here.
Yes, we all hope so, Mr. Ambassador. I mean, this is boycotting any products or anything is not a solution at all. And I strongly believe that, it's going to be sorted out in the near future. You mentioned that, US is the arbiter in the Middle East. And also you mentioned that Jared Kushner is, headed to visit Saudi Arabia and Qatar this week, actually. Can we read this upcoming visit a strong sign to end the conflict between Qatar and other GCC states?
Yes, I think that this visit. Well, I mean, let's face it. Jared Kushner is a lame duck, together with the president, and so they are trying to probably do a few more things which are on their agenda before the 20th of January, and maybe also to preempt certain activities by Joseph Biden, and his team. But probably they have two purposes here, because probably he's likely to visit Saudi Arabia and Qatar. So maybe one of their aims is to try to lessen the blockade, to start, for example, with humanitarian the humanitarian element of the blockade. Maybe they should convince the Saudis to open their borders and provide again some basic foods and equipment for the Qataris, for the people. They could definitely, it would be a great service for the Gulf as a whole by the departing President Trump and his team. The second one would be, I believe, and it has also another point which is important, is that probably they will be there to convince also the Qataris and the Saudis to normalize relations with Israel, and to continue with this process of normalization of relations with Israel. So they may have two objectives there.
There has been one of the, a couple of questions just, popped up about Israel. Let me ask first Nenad, and then I will get back to you, Mr. Ambassador. Regarding Israel, I mean, after signing peace deals, relations between Israel and some Gulf countries are normalizing very rapidly, and we are witnessing the effects of this in the economic field as well. Do you think that this will impair Turkey's competitiveness in the region, or create a kind of win-win situation for all parties?
That's an interesting question, Arda. And I think, first of all, the deal between Israel and the UAE is positive in terms of trade. UAE is very interested in a number of technologies that Israeli companies are providing, from defense to agriculture, to all kinds of other technologies, which are even going further into defense and intelligence space, etc. And of course, UAE is very interested in using the old pipeline that Israel has, that you can ship back to Europe, and also, of course, Israeli visitors, tourists coming to the UAE, etc. So the number of things here are positive. I think the implications for Turkish companies are mostly in a sense that competition will just get even worse. You will have suddenly a lot of Israeli players playing a business game across at least the UAE, maybe later on in a few other markets. And again, it reinforces the point that I raised earlier, that competition is really tough in the GCC, and this is just yet another addition to the whole thing. I think Turkish competitiveness in the region itself, as a question that you raised, Arda, really, I think ultimately depends on the ultimate marketing mix of the companies, Turkish companies that want to sell in the GCC, the right product at the right price, with the right distribution partners, with the right promotional support. All of those things are crucial. But of course, in the short term, these efforts could be easily hampered with the poor political relationship that Turkey has with Saudi, and also you can argue with UAE as well, with the disagreements they have on Qatar, disagreements they have on Syria, and Eastern Mediterranean as a whole, the Turkish involvement in Libya. All of those things are often being cited as the issue that could affect the Turkish business, at least in the short term, as we see in Saudi with the informal boycott.
May I add a few points to Mr. Pacek's statement?
Yes, please, please, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you. With respect to our relations with, first of all, let me point out that Joseph Biden and his team will have a different view of the Gulf, because you might recall that Joe Biden's major principles in his foreign policy was declared as promoting democracies, fighting authoritarian regimes, and promoting human rights and fundamental freedoms. These three principles, if they are to be applied in the Gulf, I think maybe they won't be fraternizing certain leaders, as the case as it was the case with President Trump, and they will have to probably raise certain issues in the Gulf to promote human rights, to promote empowerment of women, and so on. So this is going to be quite difficult. I understand that, for example, the Saudi leadership started with the so-called introduction of moderate Islam and so on into the region, and also offered some certain rights to women and so on. It should continue, and then the American side will encourage the Gulf countries to do so. With respect to Turkish-Saudi relations and Turkish-United Arab, United Arab, the Emirates, sorry. You see, if you analyze it carefully, we don't have border disputes with them. We don't have territorial designs. We're not threatening each other. And we're not neighbors. The closest point from Turkey is about 800 kilometers to Saudi Arabia. So the differences are ideological, and sometimes people they get emotional about their bilateral relations and their rapport with other countries. So this is why I believe common sense. If common sense is to prevail, then the two sides could start a dialogue, and they try to bridge the difference. Diplomacy is the art of bridging differences. It is the art of reaching compromises. So I'm somewhat optimistic. If there is a political will on both sides, a real political will, there is always if there is a will, there is a way. So I still hope that we can do something together.
One of the questions from our audience, let me address this question to you, Mr. Ambassador. Is there divergence between Saudi and UAE looking at relations with Turkey?
Yes, it seems so. It seems so. Yes. At this point in time, it seems that the Turkish leadership is able to communicate with the king of Saudi Arabia. And they started a process. Unfortunately, it is not the case at this point with the Emiratis, apparently. But of course, you never know. You never know. Maybe with the support of other mediators, with other forces, including the team of Joe Biden, because Joe Biden says that we will try to restore alliances. We would like to establish alliances. We would like to counter China and others like Iran and so on, but by establishing alliances, and therefore probably they will put more effort in this direction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rende. Another interesting question here in front of me, actually, is asking audiences, our audience is asking to all of us here. The question is as follows: what will be the biggest transformation area that we expect in the GCC region after recovery of pandemic? Nenad, let us start with you.
Yes, interesting question. And I think the transformation will be very industrial and R&D related in the UAE. We will see most likely significant acceleration of diversification in Qatar and in Oman as well. The diversification and transformation of the Saudi economy likely to continue one way or the other, but slower than the authorities would like. We see great delays with this in Kuwait. Overall, there are significant issues always building up between the government and the parliament. Parliament tends to block all sorts of issues on a regular basis, which is delaying progress on any significant change. So I think companies, Turkish companies operating in various sectors will have opportunities, particularly in those economies that are diversifying, particularly companies that are in IT, digitalization, any new industries, nanotechnology, biotechnology, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence. This is where a lot of companies are going into. In Abu Dhabi, for example, you see also a shift towards manufacturing in semiconductors, healthcare, aerospace industry. There are opportunities building up in completely new industries that were not really present in any meaningful manufacturing way in the territory. And Saudi, of course, has no choice but to try and attract a lot of foreign direct investment in order to finally have non-oil exports as well rising at some point. But as I said, this is still quite slow at the moment.
Thank you very much, Nenad. Would you like to say anything on the same question, Mr. Ambassador?
Yes, please. I think that's important. After I hope that globally we will be able to fight COVID-19, because it is in the interest of our people. We need a higher rate of global growth in the interest of all. COVID-19 is likely to be fought successfully by the end of 2021. What I would wish to see in the Gulf as transformation is quality education. I think what is important in the Gulf is education and quality education, because one of their weaknesses, I mean, they have so many strengths, as Mr. Pachek said, of course, reserves. The climate is not conducive, of course, a very difficult climate to cope with, but also let's keep in mind that unfortunately the Gulf countries squandered billions of dollars of oil money by investing abroad and not completing their infrastructure on time. They are still working on their infrastructure, and they could not lift their people out of poverty. I mean, in many Gulf states, still poverty is the order of the day. Another thing which I thought that it would be really worth mentioning from a retired diplomat point of view, is that what they need is to promote the culture of peace and the culture of tolerance. This is missing. You see, if you don't have a culture, if you cannot teach your children, the new generation, the culture of peace and tolerance, the culture of mutual understanding, then you will create people who will believe that you can kill in the name of God. And this is very important, that the threat of international terrorism and Islamic fundamentalism should be fought or would resolve in the Gulf and beyond, in the Middle East as a whole. And this is why it's so important to educate their people and to lift their people out of poverty, because it's not enough to invest on technologies and digitalization and so on. Their weaknesses is that they are provided, the services are rendered by the mercenaries, by the Indians, by the Turks, by the Lebanese and the Egyptians and others. They need their own human resources, and this is why I think probably the clergy should step out of this business of education.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. I think we're just, even exceeding our time, but maybe I should finish with one interesting question. What can Turkey do to attract more investment from the Gulf region? Is the customs union between Turkey and EU an attraction for investors from the Gulf that want to use Turkey as a hub? Nenad, let's start with you, and then just very shortly, very briefly, and then let's conclude with Mr. Ambassador Mithat Rende.
Yes, we actually work with a number of Gulf families who are very active in terms of their business in the Gulf. Many of them are very keen on, in fact, accelerating their export footprint. And so far, we have seen many of them spreading their wings towards Asia, towards North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. But they are doing it slowly. They are not huge multinationals. Many of them very cautiously only going to the neighboring markets. So we have not seen huge investments by many of the Gulf families going anywhere, really. They mostly still manufacture in a few locations. So I think there is a significant room here for the Turkish government to promote Turkey as a good location for manufacturing, and particularly, of course, having in mind the customs union with Europe. We have so many of our multinationals who are manufacturing in Turkey. I'm very happy with their productivity, with the plants, with the quality of people. And even today, when Turkish business is tough in the short term and selling into Turkey is really complicated, we still see our multinationals even expanding the existing manufacturing plants and of course using the lower valuations to actually buy some of the Turkish family businesses which are now in distress due to forex debts or anything that they accumulated in the past. So I think there is plenty of room for Turkey to promote themselves, so Turkey to promote itself among the Gulf family businesses. And of course, a springboard to Europe, Turkey as a springboard to Europe, it makes a lot of sense, particularly in the sense that we expect Turkish lira also to keep staying fairly weak in the coming 1 or 2 years in particular. And from that standpoint, producing in Turkey for Europe is a competitive thing.
Thank you very much, Nenad. Mr. Rende?
Thank you. Very shortly, the short answer is yes, definitely. A bit longer answer is that any country to be regarded as a powerful country should have one of the legs, the legal leg, strong enough. And so one of the basis should be the legal leg, and this is so important for Turkey that we will have a strong legal leg to show to the Gulf countries that their interest will be protected through the judiciary and through international law. This is very important. I agree that the location of Turkey is quite advantageous, and also the industrial base of Turkey. And if I were an Arab investor from Kuwait or from Qatar or Saudi Arabia, of course I would choose Turkey to produce and sell because of the customs union, and I hope that it will be modernized. But let me finish by sharing with you an exchange we used to have when I served in Qatar. A prominent Qatari businessman kept telling us that you would be more interesting for the Arab world if you are more integrated with Europe. And Istanbul will be more attractive for us when you are fully integrated with Europe and the European Union. So I think I should stop here and thank you so much for having successfully moderated this webinar.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Excellency Mithat Rende. I'd like to conclude first by thanking Ambassador Rende and Nenad Paček once again for your valuable insights and sharing your in-depth knowledge on these important topics with us today. Then special thanks to the great TÜSİAD team as well for arranging this successful webinar. And a final thanks and appreciation go to our audience today who showed interest and participated in our session. We look forward to meeting at many more such informative sessions together in the near future. Above all, everything starts and ends with health, with good health, actually. And I would like to take this opportunity to convey my condolences, 1,475,000 people globally who have lost their lives as of now, and wish quick recoveries to those who have been suffering from COVID-19 at the moment. We all hope vaccines with high efficacy will be available with mass distribution soon so that the herd immunity will be achieved. With that, we have reached at the end of our session today. I wish you all good health. Please keep well, stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.